The customer experience will never outweigh the employee experience. Empowering employees to make decisions that they need to make without the manager. Got to be okay operating in a gray area
Yeah.
because, anytime you put content out there, anytime you put something out there that you create, you could have the best intentions in the world. And there's a few people that are going to take it the wrong way. You have to figure out, how do you communicate with your staff daily? What are the 2 or 3 things you're going to talk about every single day? And it's going to get repetitive and it's going to get boring, but there's power in it just to align your teams.
Welcome to Retention Roadmap, navigating service success for new car dealerships. I'm your host, Bill Springer. Today's podcast is sponsored by DriveSure. DriveSure helps new car dealerships remain the go-to provider for maintenance, tires, and repairs. For information on how DriveSure can help your dealership, go to drivesure.com/dealershipssolutions. Today's guest is Austin Conroy, the Regional Fixed Operations Director for the Rohrman Automotive Group in Indiana. Austin brings a unique blend of operational experience and creative energy to the automotive space. In addition to overseeing fixed ops strategy across multiple rooftops, he's also widely known online as Dealer Plate Guy, where he shares a refreshingly honest and often humorous behind the scenes look at dealership life. With 68,000 followers on Instagram, Austin is part of a new wave of auto professionals using social media to build transparency, share insights, and engage with customers and industry peers alike. Today, we'll explore how he balances both roles and how that combination is helping elevate the customer experience and improve retention across the board. So, Austin, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Bill. Excited
Absolutely.
for the discussion today.
Yeah, likewise. So let's jump right in. I want to, really start talking about fixed ops leadership and customer retention. And as a regional fixed operations director for the Rohrman Automotive Group, in 2025, what are your kind of top priorities around customer retention and trying to bring more customers back more often?
Yeah, I think it's twofold, and it's interesting. Like the word retention, specifically you mentioned customer retention, but I think one of the things that we've done as a group that's helped our customer retention is focus on employee retention.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of dealers will forget about that. So this work goes back 3-4 years ago. When I got into this position, and just talking about, first of all, like the first step of it, how do we retain our employees? Because you're not going to have customer retention when every time they come in, it's a different service advisor.
Yeah.
Every time they come in, it's a different manager. And when I say that, I mean every 6 months you're having a different manager, different advisors, a whole different crew. So that's kind of been one of the things I've noticed over the last 3 or 4 years as we've built out processes and structures to retain our employees. Now we have advisors, that have been with us for 3 or 4 years, and even 2 years plus, is better than industry average for that role. Now customers, they have a familiar face when they come in, right? And now they're coming in to see a person because there's a personal connection. So I think that that's where retention starts for us. There's some other things that we're doing, rolling out some like an oil change program, buy two, get one free. Very simple, but I think it's working. And then there's some other strategies too. But again, I think it starts with that employee retention piece. And that's where we've seen a lot of success.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad you brought that up, Austin, because in my experience, when we're looking at dealership retention rates over time, I just kind of consistently see higher retention rates amongst dealerships that have a really solid employee base, and have longtime employees. And as you said, that turnover really, I think it really does impact the customer experience and their comfort with the dealership overall.
Yeah, there's an old saying, the customer experience will never outweigh the employee experience. And, we've really taken that to heart in terms of, what benefits are we providing employees? What career paths are we providing employees? Even work schedules.
Mhm.
That was one of the things as service advisors, they work ding to dong, as we call it, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Then they work a couple Saturdays a month. And you just look at the amount of hours that they work with that workload, the stress of dealing with customers and dealing with issues. Because let's face it, every customer's coming to us when they have issues for the most part. Sure, there's some of those just oil changes, right? But I mean, it is issue after issue after issue. And then you're demanding that employee works 60 hours a week, 6 days a week. And it's just a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for burnout. It's a recipe for a very poor customer experience.
Yeah, absolutely. As you look around, not only at the dealerships that you're leading, Austin, but other dealerships that you may have some association with. or familiarity with.
Mhm.
What are some of the areas, if any, that you see dealerships kind of leaving things on the table when it comes to customer experience or customer retention?
You know, it's such a frustrating question because, and I was just dealing with it this morning. It's like, it's just the really simple, easy things of like, do what you say what you do. If you promise a time, deliver it. You know, don't turn someone away because they didn't have an appointment. A customer comes into your shop and says, hey, I have an AC concern. I made an appointment online. What does the advisor do? They look at the computer and they go, oh, I don't see an appointment in here for you. Sorry. It's like, wait a second. No. Why do we exist? Service. We are supposed to serve the customers. And so, that's one of the things I think that dealers get it wrong, but they may not miss it or they may miss it because it's a very simple thing on the
Right.
surface. It's like, it's the old saying again, is like treat others how you would want to be treated. And I think we forget that sometimes. There's so many advisors and service managers that turn it into a fight with the customer. Why are we fighting the customer? Why are we resisting the customer? The other thing would be just empowering employees to make decisions that they need to make without the manager. If I need to make a decision, customer calls in and says, hey, the drain plug was left a little bit loose, there's some oil on the floor. Look, I hope that never happens, but let's face it, it does.
Hmm.
If you have service departments that have 150 to 200 cars a day coming in, it's going to happen at least once. Like, it just will. And maybe no fault of the technician. Maybe the little filter crush ring got a little snapped or whatever it was in there and you got a little oil. The advisor at that point should never have to go to their manager. They should be able to call the tow truck company, send the tow truck company out, not worry about the expense or what it's going to cost. That's just a simple example, I think, of other ways dealers fail is not empowering their employees to make those decisions in the moment and spend their money when it comes to customer service and investing in like that customer experience. Even if it's another one that I deal with that just really frustrates me is no matter how much I preach this in the stores, you have a new car customer. And let's say they have 3,000 miles on the vehicle. They come in because, the Bluetooth connectivity on their phone is not as good as their wife's when they're making calls. What is the first thing the advisor does? Well, we're going to try to do this under warranty, but if not, you're going to have to owe us a diagnosis fee of $170, $200, whatever the door rate is.
Hmm.
I mean, this customer bought the car from us. They've only had 3,000 miles on it. Why do we even bring up the fact that there's diagnosis? And I know that there's situations where rightfully we should charge them diagnosis. But we're talking about overall customer experience. Like, our employees should be trained to serve the customer first, worry about the profit later to an extent. Again, as operators, we're like, we see the bottom line. And so that's a very scary thing to say. But, being able to teach them through, okay, these are some situations where we would rather you deal with it, come to us and say, hey, here's what I did.
Yeah.
I paid for the tow for this customer. I went ahead and waived the diag because of this. Great. You made an awesome decision in the moment. Here's maybe how I would have done it differently, or good job. Keep going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and those are really cultural issues, aren't they? Around how do we expect to treat our customers, and using to a large degree common sense, and given some latitude for maybe some decisions that are made. Well, maybe we shouldn't have made that, but that's okay. I'd rather you be a little more aggressive with respect to taking care of the customer than the other way around.
No, absolutely. And I always tell advisors, I still have a personal bonus out there. I will give you money out of my own pocket if I get a bad review because they say we over communicated with the customer or we did too much for the customer, right? Like,
Yeah, that's right.
I'm ready to pay that out of my own pocket. I'm always carrying the money around with me.
Good point. Good point. Well, let's shift a bit to social media.
Sure.
You what originally inspired you to start sharing your dealership experience on Instagram?
Yeah, so I got involved with Russ Flips Whips, who's another very large social media personality, and we had a chance that he came out to one of the dealerships in our auto group last year. It was about a year ago to this date, and he came for a sales event. It was kind of this chance encounter through social media and some different things that happened. And while he was out here, he was like, "Well, hey, I'll kind of train your teams on social media," and hey, that's great. So I sat through the training. I didn't really do anything with it. I didn't really see anybody else do anything with it either. And so I thought, what, there might be something here. I felt like the fixed ops community in particular, advisors, technicians were a little underserved when it comes to social media content. And so I knew I was going to be seeing Russ again because we hired him to do another training at one of our stores in Chicago. And I was kind of the point person in setting it up. And
Hmm.
I was like, I need to start posting some videos. because it would be really cool to do a video with Russ on my account, that I have going. And so I did two skits about the parts department, and then I did one about hiring a lube tech,
Hmm.
and that one went crazy. At that time, I only had TikTok. I wasn't even in Instagram or Facebook, and that one did like 1.3 million views, and just
Wow.
was like, whoa, there's something to this. And so yeah, that was kind of why I started doing it, and now it's really evolved into the second job I never wanted. That's what I keep telling people. So, but
Yeah,
it's fun.
68,000 followers. That's crazy.
Yeah, we have, and I don't say this to brag, but just the numbers like Facebook, 82,000 followers, and then TikTok, I think I'm close to 60,000 on there. So
Wow.
over 200,000 across all the platforms, and in terms of viewership, I mean, it's staggering to say, over 20 million views a month. I think this month I'm going to be close to 30 million
Wow.
with the videos across all the platforms. It's just what it's turned into is very interesting,
Yeah,
to
I
say the
bet.
least.
Yeah. Do you have any idea in terms of how that audience kind of breaks down between vehicle owners and, say, dealership employees, or is that not difficult to find out?
I don't. I wouldn't even know how to pull that data, to be honest with you. I do feel like some of the most engaged posts I feel like are technicians, but then I'll post one. I did one recently about buying a second key at a dealership, and there are a lot of like customers that pop in there too. So I think
Sure.
it's such a broad reach. And when you're talking about
Yeah.
millions of views, it's such a broad reach on it.
Yeah.
Um, that again, it's just been very surprising to see the reaction and kind of what it's turned into.
I bet. That's great. Have you seen any impact on, we were talking earlier about employee retention or dealership culture or even customer, the impact on your service drive customers? Have you seen any impact from that?
I've seen a little bit. I think there's been some hiring impacts from it. One of the things with social media, if you want to grow organic social media, it's got to be this give mentality, right? And so if I'm constantly on that platform, like, hey, I'm hiring a service manager, I'm hiring advisors, I'm hiring, like, nobody wants to follow you, right?
Right.
So it's kind of this give, 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 and then ask at some point. And
Hmm.
so I've still had some really good hiring outcomes out of it. I've also had a lot of people reaching out to me for career advice or, hey,
Hmm.
I have this situation at work. How would you handle this? And so there's been a lot of really cool outcomes just in terms of connecting with people like that. The technician is still with us that I hired off of TikTok Live about a year ago. That was a crazy story, right? And then I don't know. I've had some good like manager type talent. That the hard part is, truthfully, you're recruiting nationwide, but they would still have to move here. If I was hiring for a remote job, I feel like I could hire hundreds of, thousands of people if I wanted to tomorrow. But
Right.
the location does kind of stand in the way sometimes. But
Yeah.
as far as anything customer related, I've been very careful to separate my brand from the Roman Auto Group. I think that the Romans have been so supportive and have really pushed me to do this, but I kind of just took it on myself. I want to keep it separate. I don't wear. I kind of learned my lesson. I don't wear any of the branding shirts, Roman Auto Group, in any of my videos anymore. And not that there was anything bad. I just saw some comments pop up about Roman. I'm like, well, I probably should stay away from this. So I do try to keep the two brands separate. I record after work. I do record at the dealerships, and like I said, the Romans are so supportive of me doing this because there have been some great outcomes from it. And the other thing I think that's helped with current employees, as a fixed ops director, the the relationships that you build with the staff are definitely very surface level. I have 6 stores that I help with, and so it's very hard to build deep relationships as you would if you were at one store every day with the same staff. And so one of the things I think that's been great is they feel a better connection to me, and it's a lot easier for me to connect with them when I go in the stores.
Yeah. Makes
And then the
sense.
other part there's been some other, technicians like, oh, I thought you worked for this group. Like I just got hired on here. That's crazy. I get to meet you and, advisors. We have a couple other ones too. So it may not be a direct impact, but it's certainly, in our area, it certainly helps get the auto group known and helps me get known and helps me connect with not only people on social media, but also our current employees.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What do you think the future looks like with respect to, dealer plate guy and your role in social media? Anything dramatically different, or just continuing to do what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of been dreaming about that. I think I started just saying we'll see what happens, and it's really just kind of turned into this. Um, as an operator, I have an accounting degree. I'm trained in ROI, and every decision has to have an ROI. And
Yeah.
this is really one of the first projects that I took on, and just I have no clue what this is going to turn into, nor do I have any expectations of what it's going to turn into. I
Yeah.
just know that as it continues to unfold, there continues to be some really good outcomes of it. I feel like I continue to kind of evolve my content and my messaging. I have this motto of making fun of an industry I'm trying to change, and so I think the next step for the Dealer Play Guy platform is how do I use that to truly attack and change the car business, and what do I really want out of that? And so those are some things I've kind of been dreaming about. And does that include social media training for other dealerships? Does that include like some sort of a consulting type work? Does it involve like career coaching? I don't know. There's so many possibilities right now that I don't know what's next, but I'm also okay with that at
Yeah.
the same point.
Yeah. That makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, we had on as a guest just a little while ago Savannah Sims, who I
Yeah,
think you're familiar with,
yeah,
and she talked a lot about obviously social media and tying it directly to the dealership and that type of thing. And yeah, I think it's a bit of a wilderness in terms of figuring out what the right strategy is, but
yeah.
you just got to try different things and
Yeah,
see
like
what
I
works.
naturally, I'm a very black and white kind of guy. This social media is definitely a gray area. I mean,
Yeah.
it is definitely you got to have the support. And there's some auto groups that are very supportive of it. There's other auto groups that are not. And I really feel like it's you got to be okay operating in a gray area, because anytime you put content out there, anytime you put something out there that you create, you could have the best intentions in the world, and there's a few people that are going to take it the wrong way. A few people they're going to take it the way you didn't want to take it, and that's been kind of a hard lesson for me to learn too. But dealers will see one negative comment and be like, "Well, we shouldn't do social media," yet they're going to ignore, just in the course of normal business, how many bad reviews that they get. Right.
Yeah.
So that's the point I always go back to. It's like a
Yeah.
couple bad comments doesn't mean anything to all the bad reviews we just get in the course of normal business.
Right. Absolutely. So shifting a bit to transparency and trust in the service lane. We've seen a lot of technological innovations in the marketplace over the last couple of years that really help drive that. And I'm curious, why do you think transparency still remains a challenge in the service drive today?
I think part of it is the customer expectation, and maybe expectation is not the right word. The customer's perception still of service departments and dealerships. They come in knowing nothing. They all they know is their car. They need an oil change. They need a tire rotation. Like anything above and beyond that
Hmm.
is going to have to be approached with a matter of trust. The other part about transparency that we've really been experimenting with some different things is you come into our dealership, we do a multi-point inspection, we tell you the car needs X. Like let's just say it's a brake job, and let's say it's $500. So we quote you as a brake job for $500. The customer has nothing else to compare it to. So
Right.
like you go to Amazon and you type in brake pads, hundreds of different kinds of brake pads, rotors, hundreds of different kinds of rotors. What we're doing is giving the customer a choice between yes and no. So what are they naturally going to do? What would I naturally do? I'm going to say no, and I'm going to shop around and try to get the best deal, right? So, as an OEM, we obviously want to push the OEM parts, but when it comes to retention, why would we not give the customer other options? Why would we not? We should be able to defend and sell. I hate using the word sell. We should be able to defend and help the customer make a correct choice that might lead them to the OEM because it's a better fitment, it's a better quality, it's better longevity, better warranty, whatever you want to say. We should be able to give the customer that. But then the customer should also at the end of the day be able to say, "Hey, that's great. I still want to trust you as my service center and work my car because I like you as the advisor. I like the technician back there. He did the cool video for me." You know, but I'm going to go ahead and go with the aftermarket option because it's going to save me $150. So I think those are some of the different things that can help lead to a more transparent service experience, and why
Hmm.
I think customers perceive it as not transparent because it is a one option that they're presented. If you go to a restaurant and they only had one thing on the menu, you probably would be like, "What's going on here?"
Yeah.
Unless it's some Michelin five-star restaurant, right? Then
Yeah.
maybe it's a
Right.
different conversation. But I think that's where transparency has to start, just in terms of like giving the customer options, because the trust is just it's just not there, and part of it is because they have nothing to compare it to.
Yeah. I want to ask you, Austin, about tires. We spend a lot of time on the podcast and obviously in our day to day engagement with dealerships talking about tires because they're a real known defection point for even customers who identify themselves as loyal, extremely loyal to the dealership. How do you make sure your stores don't lose customers when they need tires?
Yeah, so this was not preloaded, but it's going to maybe sound like it was. So 3 years ago, we're in Lafayette, Indiana. On my drive home, I live 10 minutes from the store where my office is at. I think I drive by 4 tire shops, and so I got really curious about why we're not selling tires, and yet on my short drive home, I drive past that many tire stores. There's even more on the other side of town too. Start shopping around. Okay, if I'm a customer, it goes back to again. If I call in, what is my service team? What tire are they going to quote them? The OEM tire, whatever's
Hmm.
on their vehicle. They're
Yeah.
not going to give the customer any option. They're not going to give them a good, better, best. So some of the OEMs have that ability, 3 years ago, some of them didn't. But what I also noticed was if I call into one of these tire stores, what do they typically do? They typically quote me the cheapest possible tire. They get me in the door, and then they're going to go over the options. That was the typical process at least 3 years ago when I did some mystery shopping. So the problem was I was quoting an OEM tire, which was a great tire. It might have been a Yokohama, it might have been a Michelin tire, but it was $80 per tire more than what they were quoting at the discount tire. And the customer's like, man, forget quality. I'm going to save $300 here,
Right.
$400. So what we did as an auto group, and part of it being our size, we actually have a relationship now with a tire distributor that we buy directly from the distributor. We have a very easy online portal where the advisors can get a good, better, best quote. We carry brands that most dealerships wouldn't carry. But again, to give the customers options, to give the customers transparency. Are we going to quote the OE tire that came with it? Absolutely. But we're also going to quote them, some budget brands,
Yeah.
like Vanta, Kenda. We do a lot with Yokohama. And then, hey, there's some customers like, no, I only want Michelin's, or I only want Cooper tires, or I only want the. Great, love it. But again, giving the customer more of a wide range of it, and we have seen retention from that has really skyrocketed because now we're in the ballpark, and there were so many customers too. This was story's getting a little long, but when I was the service manager at the Toyota store, and this was about 5 years ago, the thing that used to really get me was when a customer would come in. I would say, okay, here for the oil change. We also need to rotate the tires. I get my tire rotations done for free at the tire store that I got my tires at. I said,
Hmm.
so wait a second. And this, multiple customers, this would happen multiple times a month. Wait a second. You're telling me you come here and get your oil change, and then you drive across the street and get your tires rotated? They're like, yeah. Like, what are we doing here? I mean, first of all, I think they're a little crazy because they're wasting even more time like
Sure.
getting their car service. But
Yeah.
I would end up comping the tire rotation. It's like, just stay here. It just makes sense to stay here. Not a big deal. But that again, talking about the retention and things that dealers just miss. I mean, it's such a big miss. But if you put yourself in the customer's shoes, truly walk through the experience, and I think that a lot of my content is just that. Like the one I just posted about a key, I'm watching like, man, am I going to get in trouble for this one? I don't know. Because the key, the quote was $500 for just the part, and then you had to go get labor, and it was like, no, I mean, this is actually what happens day to day in the dealership.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
that's part of what I think resonates so much with the content. But when you see it like that, you're like, wow, there is something wrong with this.
Yeah.
Just like
Yeah.
there's something wrong with the customer that comes in for an oil change, then drives across the street to get their tires rotated because they got their tires there. Like,
Right.
what are we doing?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Well, as we wrap up here, Austin, given your level of experience, what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's kind of stepping into a fixed ops leadership role today?
Um, I hit on this all the time. Daily huddles. You got to have your daily huddles. These are 5 to 7 minute stand up meetings. You have to get your team aligned. You have to get your team communicating. We talk about some of the key principles in fixed operations. It's communication, it's process, it's accountability of those processes, and then it's relationships. Those are kind of our four big pillars there. But if someone is stepping into a fixed ops leadership role at any point, like, you have to figure out, how do you communicate with your staff daily? What are the 2 or 3 things you're going to talk about every single day? And it's going to get repetitive and it's going to get boring, but there's power in it just to align your teams, let them know, hey, what do we have from yesterday that carried over? What are the expectations for today? What do you need? What issues do you see? And then once your employees communicate that to you, execute it.
Yep.
Like, if they say, hey, we need to have this fixed, or I need this tool for the shop, just get it
Yep.
and be done.
Yep.
I think those are maybe a couple pieces of advice there, but I'm
Super.
always harping on the daily huddles. Like, we have to have daily huddles.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Austin, thanks very much. If any of our listeners would like to get a hold of you, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah. Dealer Play Guy on social media. Send me a DM. All my contact info's in there, the link trees and various associated things. So
Super. Well, thank you, Austin. Really appreciate you being on the podcast today.
yeah, thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Retention Roadmap, Navigating Service Success for New Car Dealerships. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.